This program is brought to you by thepodcastfactory.com.
You're listening to the Pretend You're Fired Today podcast. And now, here's your host, Lisa Rangel.
Hello and welcome. Welcome to the 29th episode of the Pretend You're Fired Today podcast. I'm Lisa Rangel, host of the Pretend You're Fired Today podcast and founder of Chameleon Resumes. We are an executive resume writing, LinkedIn profile development, and job search consultancy firm. We help executives and high potential leaders land their next position faster. And on today's podcast, we're going to address how to ace an interview when you're dealing with an inexperienced interviewer. As you progress throughout your career, you're going to certainly encounter the hiring manager in the hiring process that is inexperienced in conducting an interview. Now, this person may be younger or older than you or roughly the same age. It may not always be the younger person who's inexperienced. So let's not make that assumption. However, when you encounter an inexperienced interviewer, you still need to win them over to get that to the next stage of the interview process. And today we're going to discuss some strategies on how to do that successfully. I know job seekers get really excited and nervous at the same time when they're going on an interview for a job that they really want. And then sometimes when the interview starts, based on the line of questioning the interviewer has led with, you start to get a vibe. You know the vibe I'm talking about. You get a vibe that the person is not very experienced at interviewing. They don't really know what they're doing. They're asking bad questions that are really symptomatic of a rookie interviewer. Your stomach starts to sink. They may be super nervous because you're more senior than they are. A number of behaviors could be happening that give you this feeling, like make your kind of stomach sink. And that mental thought appears in your head that you're like, are you kidding me? I have to deal with this. It may cross your mind as the dialogue fumbles along between you. And all it's doing is really highlighting the awkwardness of your discussion and not showcasing your strengths for the job, right? We've all been in that type of situation when you've had some years behind you in your career. But the bottom line is your fate lies in the hands of this person to get to the next phase of the interview, right? So how do you handle it, right? I suggest not doing an eye roll, just demonstrating that you can't believe this is happening. But instead, I find a successful tactic to do is to come from a place of service. I view this situation as a test, one of many tests, frankly. But in this particular case, I find that this person, this inexperienced interviewer, while they may not be able to assess your credentials effectively due to their lack of experience, it's a test of how easy you're going to be to work with on the job. And that's what they can assess, because their opinion matters regardless of how experienced you think they are. And it's a test of how well you're going to get along with people at the organization, particularly when you're more experienced, if there are more people that are inexperienced than you at the organization that you're interviewing with. So this is a test. It's always a test. So don't make their job harder. Come from a place of service. If they're terrible at asking the right questions, I suggest bleed into your answers the information that they should be asking for to help them along. However, in making their job easier and giving them the information they need that they should be asking for, you still want to always treat the interviewer as a peer. Treat them with respect, period. End of story. Do not treat them condescendingly. Do not treat them like they're your teenage child. Do not remind them that you know more and you may have a better perspective of your experience. Now, I'm not saying to not be who you are, but the key is to be humble and treat them like a peer. In treating them like a peer on equal footing, you have knowledge they don't know, but they also have knowledge that you don't know. You can take the time to ask them what they're looking for in the role. Ask them what they're prioritizing in assessing you during the conversation, and then be able to reply with answers, with examples. So this way you're showing that what they think matters to you because you're addressing it. The key is not to reposition your answer to reflect what you think should be most important. You need to address what they think is most important. Now, again, I'm not saying to be a doormat or not be who you are or to dumb down your experience. I'm not saying that at all. But just don't assume your perspective is always right simply because it's the most experienced. Inexperienced people, and you may, if you want to even come back to a time when you were that inexperienced person, just remember when somebody was trying to talk over you or tell you subtly and not so subtly that you don't know better because you don't have the experience. So just remember, put yourself back in that inexperienced person's shoes, and then just come from a place of service, come from a place of equality, come from a place of being a peer. And don't assume because you are more experienced that you're always right. Ask the interviewer why they value what they value. How do they see what they are valuing and what they're evaluating as a part of the company's daily culture or goal setting process? Ask their opinion. They know more than you on how things are working in that organization because they're working there and you're not. So you both have a position of knowing more in certain areas and knowing less in certain areas. And treat the conversation as two peers exchanging information to educate each other. And you're educating them on the value you can bring to the organization, and they are educating you on what they need and making this hire. So when asking their opinion, I also suggest working in questions that help you learn about them. So you can also not only just show interest in the job, but show interest in them, show interest in the person interviewing you. Ask them why they chose this company to work for. What behaviors do they see working for the people who are succeeding in the company versus the people who don't succeed in the company? Because you value their perspective, because they work there and you don't yet. And lastly, I reiterate this point of coming from a place of service. If you come from a place of know-it-all lecturing blowhard, you won't advance, no matter how qualified you are. No one wants to deal with that type of person with any level of experience. So keep that in mind. Come from a place of service. And even if you're a firm leader, come from a place of respect and service. You don't have to be everybody's buddy, but you need to appreciate people for where they're at and the value they bring to the table if you want to be appreciated for where you're at and the value you bring to the table. So keep that in mind. Having this stage down, having this experience down where you can interview successfully with someone who is less experienced than you and even downright inexperienced in some cases will dramatically increase your performance on an interview. Because especially as you advance in your career, more and more people are going to be younger than you and possibly less experienced than you. So you need to master this skill and you need to be conversational when working with someone who may not be as adept at interviewing you, but you know how to answer. So help them through it without seeming like you're condescending or know-it-all. So now you can be confident. When you start to get a vibe that somebody's inexperienced in interviewing, or at least less experienced than you can now be confident because you have a strategy and you have tactics in which to use in dealing with that inexperienced interviewer successfully. So this way you're going to be able to move on to the next phase. That's the goal, right? So if you found this helpful and you want more interview preparation resources, go to our interview prep sheet, go to interviewprepsheet.com and download our interview prep sheet and ensure you have all of your bases covered. So this way you're ready to nail the interview. We want you to have access to our additional interview tactics and strategies so you can nail that interview, nail that performance review, because you can use these same tactics for a performance review or an internal interview to get a promotion, and you'll be able to have all those resources at your fingertips at interviewprepsheet.com. So go get the prep sheet. In past episodes, we discuss that the only way to truly protect yourself from job loss is to pretend you're fired today. Pretend you're fired today and make a list of what you would do to start finding your next job and then do them. Do those activities proactively to keep yourself in demand and do it while you don't need the job. This is the key element in this pretend you're fired today concept, in this pretend you're fired today action list, is to keep your network primed, active. So this way you stay in the forefront of your network's mind and you create demand for yourself consistently and do it before you need it. Create the demand before you need it. This way, if your job situation changes unexpectedly, takes a direction you don't want to go, you already have pent-up demand for what you do because you've done some of these activities proactively, some of these that we've discussed today and in past episodes. And for the next few episodes going forward in this Pretend You're Fired Today podcast, we're going to continue to go through a list of tactics and activities for you to do now, as if you were let go today, to ensure that you're always ready for whatever the world brings your way. The first item on the Pretend You're Fired Today list was get your resume ready. We cover that in episodes 1 through 8, so you're going to want to revisit those. And the second item on our Pretend You're Fired Today action list was updating your profile, and you'll be able to get instruction on how to do that in episodes 9 through 12. And in the last dozen or so episodes, we've discussed job search and interview prep topics, some of which, to give you some examples, how to work with recruiters, how to make job boards work for you, how to create star and car stories. So this way you can boost your interview performance. And if you're not sure what a star or car story is, you're going to want to go to that episode and review it. Because with those tactics and additional episode topics that we discuss, you're going to crush the interview and get an offer. You're going to land that promotion. You're going to get that great interview, performance review accolade. And this way, again, things are moving forward. You're creating demand for yourself. That's the key. I'm so proud of you taking these steps, making yourself marketable when you don't need it yet. It's so smart. Most people wait and stick their head in the sand and don't do this stuff. And then bam, things change and they're scrambling because of that unexpected job change. They're scrambling to learn this stuff and try to land a new job while learning it at all the same time. And it's so stressful. So kudos to you. You really don't know how huge it is. It's awesome. Like, give yourself a serious pat on the back that you are learning this and doing some of these steps before you need it. It's huge, 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 huge. My friend saved me with her priceless advice of pretend you're fired today, make a list of activities, and start doing them little by little while you're working. I mean, I'm so grateful to know that at that time. And I'm paying it forward with you. I'm asking you to pay it forward as well and share this podcast with anyone you know at the executive or rising professional level who you feel would benefit from this build it before you need it advice. Doing the preparation suggestion in this episode as well as prior episodes will help you interview confidently. It'll help you get things ready before you need it. In our next episode, we're going to discuss how to nail the phone interview. That is such a prolific tool in the interviewing process by companies. Phone interviews are becoming more and more popular as it's a time saver for companies to interview over the phone versus in person. And also, with so many jobs being virtual, interviewing in person has become less feasible, more cumbersome for companies. So you want to master how to conduct a successful phone interview. So you'll want to tune in for the next episode. I know you're not going to want to miss it. And until then, go to interviewprepsheet.com, download our prep sheet to be ready for the next session. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Be well.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.